I thought I would take a moment to talk about the artistic process, because as you guys know, I make art. I make music. I make digital art. You can check out my Instagram. I'll put a little fucking thing right here. Um, and I have instead of making like a whole tutorial on what I do and like process videos, which I'll do in the future. I thought I would talk about my mindset and my emotional sort of framework that I work within when I'm making art, making music, whatever. Uh, and I think this is really important right now because art is under attack right now by AI. And I think if you don't have an artistic uh, process, if you don't have an artistic perspective, if you create things online or if you create anything really visual or audio or anything that's creative and is engaged with and consumed online, I think it's really important uh, to have a defined mindset and perspective. Oh my goodness gracious. Sorry. That sort of defines your work against the oncoming ocean of slop that is going to sort of ruin a lot of shit for people. So let's jump into it, right? You need to stop. The first thing is what you should stop and what you should unlearn. You need to stop comparing yourself to other people who are successful, and you need to stop trying to emulate other people's successes. This is the biggest thing that held me back for a really long time is I thought that if I did what this other artist was doing, or if I emulated this other artist to some degree, I would see similar success. And you might, but it's going to be not authentically who you are. And I think that going forward, the place for emulation is going to be in AI, right? Like the sort of idea of like taking another artist's work and emulating it or trying to sound like another artist. That is what AI does. So I would steer away from that. I would try to find some level of combining a lot of different things into something new, and sort of using your aesthetic context, your aesthetic perspective, and create something that is informed by that instead of, trying to emulate others, right? And I would say a good way of doing this is go look at the work or go listen to the work that brings you a lot of that rises an emotion out of you and sort of consciously listen to what you're hearing or consciously observe what you are seeing and try to think, why do I feel this way when I am engaging with this? Why do I feel this way when I'm engaging with this piece of media? Right. And utilize that, figure out the sort of tropes and cliches that are in a particular, whatever your lane is, whatever your niche is, figure out the tropes and cliches that are very consistent in there and figure out how to reinterpret that in your perspective. And that's the way that you make cool art, right? Is you take something that's already been made, a bunch of tropes and ideas that have already been established, and you reinterpret it through your lens, through your context. And that's really, really important because if you just go through and you're trying to sound design things to sound like Skrillex or sound like, Virtual Riot or whoever, right? Or if you're trying to make art that looks like one of your favorite Twitter artists or whatever, and instead figure out what the art is doing that is making you feel a certain way and recontextualize it. Um, that's sort of my perspective on I said that very quickly. It's not really that complicated. It shouldn't really be that complicated. And you got to figure out ways to get out of your head and just enjoy the process and to just enjoy the process of making things and you know don't try to go into things with the perspective of um, I'm doing this to gain something, or I'm doing this to get something out of it. You have to do it just to do it, and you have to enjoy doing it, right? Because if you are doing things just to gain something out of it, right? It's only going to, maybe you might see some success, but there are no rules and there are no requirements or anything like that. It's just one of those things where it's like I think that you as an artist would enjoy, winning based off of your own merits and winning based off of your own perspective and having it be a surprise, and not like, oh, I knew this was going to do good. Because there are many cases like that, right? Doing things because you know that it's going to do well. Like, um, back in the, I think, early 90s, there was this group called the Time Lords who did a song called Doctor in the TARDIS because they knew that in Britain, in the UK, how big Doctor Who was. So they made this very cheesy garbage song, and they knew it was garbage. They knew it was shit, but they knew it was going to do really well, and it did. It made them millions of dollars because if you haven't heard it, it goes like Doctor Who, the TARDIS, Doctor Who. It sucks, right? But that did open the door for them to do the KLF and all of that stuff, which is great music, right? However, you shouldn't have to dilute yourself to make great art and to see success with it, right? There are many cases of artists finding success doing things that are off the wall and weird, just be do what you feel is what I would say with art is do what you feel and do what feels right, you know. The next thing is motion versus motion versus movement, right? You got to have the balance between motion and movement with anything. And the reason why this is relevant to art is because motion is more financial, right? Like you can get motion by having like a shitty job and, situationally anything, right? Movement is where you are making meaningful moves in a particular field, right? Like you're making moves, you're doing something, you're causing ripples, and I think that everyone needs that balance between motion and movement. Your motion doesn't necessarily have to come from art. Your, your motion can come from like being a salesperson or being a substitute teacher. Who knows, right? Um, but your movement should come from something that's fulfilling, something that moves you, right? Doing something that moves you and makes you feel fulfilled, right? And makes you move around and do things, right? So yeah, um, your movement should come from your artistic process, and if your motion comes from art, that's cool, right? But it is a balance. If you're just getting motion from art, then it's not really moving you anymore, right? So you got to find a balance between doing things that you love and doing things that you have to do in order to be able to keep doing things that you love because life is short and just doing it to make money, just doing things to make money is the reason why you make money is to be able to do things that you love, right? Unfortunately, I wish we didn't have money. I wish that we like, you know, just lived in a world without money, but unfortunately here we are. We have money and we have to learn how to use it and learn how to make it work for us, I guess. But yeah, just keep in mind that the artistic process is very, very important and you should have a process. You shouldn't just jump to the end. If you're just thinking about the result of the work, right, it's going to make the result suck because you're going to be rushing through the artistic process to try and get to this result. And it's not going to be at the level of quality that you want it to be, right? So just slow down, look at what's in front of you, work on it, enjoy the work, and it will be fulfilling. It will be much more fulfilling for you than trying to, you know, fulfill some result. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the artistic process. Peace. Love you guys.